Hey, Real Green Ninja here. Today we're talking about allocation, so let's begin. We've actually been getting a few calls about this, about allocating money or it's not allocated properly, and I kind of wanted to do a video explaining what allocation is, what you can do as far as reallocating, as well as what will happen if you do reallocations, how it will affect some reports and stuff like that. So let's go ahead and open up a customer's account here, and we're going to open up into their history tab, and you'll see that we have some things done. We have a couple services that were performed. We had a posting error credit. Maybe they were supposed to get a half off, and we forgot to apply the discount code. We also have a payment that was entered. And if we scroll down a little bit more, we also have a debit adjustment. I just kind of wanted a nice sample of different transactions on this customer's account to kind of show you how things are going to work. Now, the thing about allocation, essentially you're saying this is where the money's going. When we click on a transaction, for example, the $75 payment, you'll see down here, part of the money got applied to round 2 and part of it got applied to round 3. And that's important because that will determine whether or not something is funded if all the money that is needed to cover it has been assigned. As a retail customer or a residential customer, I usually could care less how my allocation is. My concern is, what is that final remit? Is it accurate? So if my $5 that I pay towards a cable company, that $5 go towards a cable box rental? Does it go towards my TV plan? Does it go towards my internet plan? I don't care. I care about that final remit. But there are some companies out there that have commercial accounts that says, no, invoice number 1234 has to be paid by check number 5678. And in that case, it is important because if the money gets put in the wrong spot, the customer might call back and say, hey, what's going on here? Why do you say I owe for the service when I paid you a check specifically that's supposed to be used for it? So again, we can go in there, we can reallocate it. We can move the money from one location to another. The thing is there are some adjustment codes, for example, the KK, that might not let you reallocate. And the way you can tell easily is if there is a reallocate button in the lower left-hand corner. This is also why we don't recommend using those double repeating character codes, because sometimes you need to move stuff around and those double repeating character codes won't allow you to do it. Also, keep in mind that when we allocate things, it could affect reports that we've ran in the past if we run those exact same reports for the same date range and stuff. And again, I'll explain a little bit more here in a moment. So if we take a look here, we'll see that we have this service 1 is being covered by the payment in 410 and 71. If we take a look at the posting error credit, you'll see it's being addressed by the posting error debit. So they're kind of counteracting each other because they're both 25. Now, the thing about allocation is, again, we're telling the money where we want the money to go. We will not change the overall balance of the account. If I go through and I take that $25 off this from the debit and apply it towards something different, I'm not going to affect the actual remit balance on the account. I'm just going to move the money around. For example, if we take a look here, we have the service for $50. Pop open Service Assistant, and we come up here. There's our $50 service, and you'll see it's being covered by $25 of this $200 payment and $25 of this $25 payment. We could take this and say part of it got applied to here and here, and then part of it got applied for this payment right here. Now, this right here, we have a 7/1/2018 payment that was entered applying towards something back in March. All right. So again, we're kind of paying for something in the past for something recent payment. The thing is though, is again, maybe this payment wasn't supposed to go towards this. Maybe it was supposed to go towards something else. So when you're moving money around, all we're doing is we're saying, I want to take this payment, apply it here, or I want to apply it here. I want to take this credit adjustment, apply it here. Again, we can kind of move things around if we need to. Now, when you're entering a payment, if you do not allocate at the time of payment entry, it applies the oldest balance going forward. Oops, I left something out there. There we go. It goes through the oldest balance going forward, and that's just to help try to keep accounts off of credit hold. And that's important because, again, when the account's on credit hold, you're not going to be able to pull services from on the invoice screen if they're not prepaid. So like I said, by default, it usually applies the oldest balance going forward. Now, I have another account here. He has money he owes. He's on credit hold, and I just want to show you how to allocate money during the payment entry. And again, we're not talking about prepay. We're talking about stuff that's already been posted in production. When we go to the payment entry screen, it's going to show you a list of the services that we could apply money towards. You see rounds 4 and 5, we could do prepay simply because they're not showing as being completed. Now, rounds 1, 2, and 3 have been completed, so therefore they have the completion date. But because they have not been fully funded, meaning that there's still money owed to those specific services, that's why we're seeing them on the list. Once it's completely funded, it will disappear. Also, if you move allocation around and make something that was fully funded not fully funded, it will then show up again on this list. So again, like I said, some things will happen when you do reallocations. Now, if I come in here and say I want to apply a $100 payment, so I come in here, type in my $100, Down here, I can check mark where I want that $100 to go. I can say I want it to go to this service, I want it to go to this service. Now, because these services are partially funded, you'll notice that even though I selected these services both at $50, I'm only using $50. So again, it's not fully funded. That means there's still money that's owed in part to these services. Now, if I click this service, it's going to say, wait a minute, we only have a $100 payment and you're selecting way more than $100 worth of stuff to allocate to. Again, keep in mind, it's always important to update the payment amount to match what the customer actually physically gave you. If I come in here and I uncheck these and I come back and I check that again, you'll still see it's showing there's not enough money to cover it. So you can only allocate the money if there is an outstanding balance on the particular transaction, as well as if you have enough money to totally satisfy the outstanding balance. You can always go back afterwards and reallocate part of it if we wanted to. Now, going back to the account, we're not going to worry about saving that. Going back to this account here, like I mentioned before, we have the 410 and the 71 payments applying towards that first service. So if I pop back into my PowerPoint, we have the 410, part of it's going towards here, and then of course we have that 71 payment. Now for the next service, you'll see that we have 410 and 61. So if we take a look at the PowerPoint here, there's a second service, and then we have that payment of 61. You can see as we go through that we're having, again, services that are being covered by payments from different dates because we didn't allocate when we entered the payment originally. If we go down to this payment in here, this one for $200, you'll see it's applying to 1 and 2. If we come down here to number 3, you will see it's being covered by 6-1. And then if we click on this adjustment, those posting your credit and posting your debit are kind of counteracting each other. And this final payment is what ended up paying off the accounts to bring their balance to 0 at the, I'm sorry, this payment here is pay off the account and bring the balance 0. And that's the 7/1/18 payment that's applying towards the 3/1 service. As far as reallocating, it's actually pretty straightforward. And if we have the reallocate button down here, that means we're allowed to do it. So let's say I wanted to take this 7/1 payment and apply it towards something else. When I click the reallocate button, it's going to show you what it could be applied to. The thing is everything has been fully funded. So there's really no open amount somewhere. But if I come up here and I go to this first transaction, and then I remove the allocation for this payment here from the service by hitting the reallocate, and then deleting out our amount applied, when I click done here, you'll see now this one has an unpaid balance of $25. It also means it's no longer considered paid for. If I go back and hit the reallocate button and say, let's reapply that $25 here and hit done, you'll see there's no unpaid balance and now it has a pay date and it's considered paid for. Your pay date is always going to be the most recent transaction, the payment or credit that got applied towards that service. If I were to come into reallocate, and let's completely remove the allocation on here. And then I come down to here in the ER2, reallocate, and I'm going to completely remove the allocation here. And I come down here to my third service, reallocate, and again, I'm going to completely remove the allocation here. So now none of those services are considered paid for. Now, again, the overall balance has not been touched. Because remember, all we're doing is moving money around. We're moving money between boxes. If we want to make things a little bit more in line with what the customer wants, again, if it's important, then what we can do is once we've removed those allocations from whatever we need to remove it from, when we hit reallocate, it's going to show us any payments that could apply towards it. That $200 payment is supposed to apply to the $200 service. So I can come in here and hit reallocate, put our 200 in. Oh, if I actually type there we go. Put that 200 in there. When I click done, you'll see no unpaid balance and the service is considered paid for. If I come up here and I click on there and I hit reallocate, you no longer see that $200 payment in there because again, we've already set that money aside. So what we effectively did is we took all the allocations off the transactions like so, and then I said, I want this to cover that. I want that to be lined up there. Now, going back to Service Assistant, let's see here, maybe this 6/1 payment should have been applied towards that. I can come in here and say, apply $50. Now, if I try to apply all $75, when I click off of it, it's gonna say, hey, wait a minute, you only owe 50 bucks on that. That's all that's left. So I'm gonna go ahead and again, make sure that's set to 50. When I hit done, now this is considered paid for and now has a pay date. If I go to my posting error, again, maybe I just might wanna have the posting errors, counter each other. I can reallocate. I can say, you know what, maybe you're gonna have this posting error credit applied towards round 3, or I just might say have those posting errors counter each other. ER2, the second service has been allocated, the payment's allocated. I go down to 3 here, I hit my reallocate, and then I can say, you know what, for this 415 service, let's go ahead and apply, the 25 outstanding. because again, I'm out open as 25. I put my 25 in there, and I just might turn around and say, you know what? I'm also going to have the $25 from this payment here on 7/1 applied towards it. So again, you can kind of play around with the numbers, and you're not affecting the balance at all. All we're doing is we're moving the money from one thing to another. I say, okay, well, instead of covering this, maybe I'm going to cover this and this. You know, I'm going to split that up between the allocation. So I always tell people, imagine you have shoe boxes, and in the front of each shoe box, it has the name of the service or the debit adjustment, and then all you're doing is you're moving the dollar bills between each box. The thing is, though, is when you start playing around with allocations, and you can start affecting reports. The reason why is you saw before that when I removed the allocation for those services, they no longer had a pay date, which means the system no longer considered them paid for, even though the account balance was still zero. So the thing is if I were to come up here and I were to run one of my production reports, like a service production by salesperson, and I said, I want to set a pay date range, let's say year to date or something, because maybe I pay my commissions once I receive the money from my customers. Well, what will happen is if I come in here and say I want to do January 1st to December 31st, anything that does not have a pay date will not show up on this report anymore. So if I were to run it now, I would see these transactions show up. Why? Because their pay date falls within the date range. But if I were to go through and remove the allocation, now there's no more pay date, it's going to fall off that report. Keep that in mind. When you do allocations, it can affect reports that it may have been ran in the past if you run them again for the exact same date range. It also can affect aging. So if we click on aging, you'll see this guy right here is currently on credit hold. They got money sitting in the 91 to 120. I'll see here. I take it off of here and I apply it to that. So done. And I go to aging and age the account. You'll see when I age the account, it did change how that age came through, because what I did was I removed the money from the older transaction and I applied it to a newer transaction. And that older transaction fell outside of the original aging category it was in. So this could cause people to go on credit hold or cause them to go off of credit hold. That's why when you put in a payment and don't allocate, it automatically applies to the old balance going forward. So like I said, for the most part, most customers probably don't care where the money got applied. What they care about is what that final credit limit balance is. There's also situations where you might say, hey, wait a minute, why is this customer on credit hold when he shouldn't be, because he gave me a check yesterday and it should have applied towards the oldest balance. Maybe when the payment was entered, it got applied to something else. And because of that, now we have to go into history, and then we have to move the payment or transaction or credit adjustment from one thing to another. So like I said, aging can affect reports. It can put people on credit hold. It can take people off credit hold. And I always recommend anytime you change transaction dates or change allocations, then you always want to go to the aging tab and age that account to make sure it's reflecting accurately. So remember, when you reallocate, all you're doing is moving money from one box to another. So if you're running a situation where you can't do the reallocations, again, give us a call. We can take a look at it. I hope this kind of helps and it didn't cause any confusion. Trust me, when I first started working here, this is one of those concepts that took me a while to wrap my brain around. And then if you need anything, definitely give us a call. And I hope you guys have yourselves a wonderful day.